The candles had long since burned low in the ducal chambers, but Eleanor could not sleep. Shadows clung to the carved ceilings, stretching across her canopy bed like dark fingers reminding her of the vow spoken weeks ago. "I will never love you," the Duke had said with the cold finality of iron gates closing behind her. The words had not been shouted in anger, nor whispered with malice. They had been delivered with calm indifference, as though he were speaking of the weather, as though they were fact rather than cruelty. She remembered standing in her wedding gown, ivory silk trailing across the polished floor, her heart foolishly beating with hope. She had dreamed of being more than just his duchess. She had dreamed of being his companion, his partner, his equal. But when he spoke, the fragile castle of her illusions shattered. Now, weeks later, the ache in her chest still throbbed like an unhealed wound. She lived in a palace gilded with riches yet found herself lonelier than when she had been a governess. The corridors whispered of her failure, and the servants' eyes shifted away, afraid of her sorrow. The Duke fulfilled his duties with precision, attending councils, overseeing estates, greeting foreign guests. But with her, there was only silence. And then, one night, everything changed with a letter. Eleanor had woken to find the softest rustle at the edge of her bed. At first she thought it was the wind, but when her fingers brushed the linen, they encountered folded parchment sealed with clumsy wax. She frowned, lifting it to the candlelight. The script was uneven, the ink blotched, the words pressing into the paper with childish determination. Her heart trembled as she read, "We choose you." 3 words, nothing more, but they pierced deeper than any declaration of love ever could. Her hands shook, and she pressed the letter against her chest as though it were a lifeline. She knew instantly who had written it. The Duke's children, not hers, never hers, for she had not borne them, but his from his first marriage. The Duchess before her had died tragically, leaving behind 2 children, Clara and James. They had been polite in her presence, reserved, almost watchful. But now, this letter. Eleanor's throat tightened. She sank onto the bed, the words swimming before her eyes as tears threatened. In the stillness of the night, she whispered to herself, "They choose me." It was the first time since her wedding day that warmth unfurled inside her. The next morning, she saw Clara at breakfast. The girl was no more than 10, with dark curls tumbling around a pale face and eyes far too serious for her age. James, only 8, clutched his bread with both hands, crumbs dusting his lips. Eleanor studied them quietly, wondering if she should speak of the letter. But Clara's gaze lifted, met hers, and in that fleeting second, the truth passed silently between them. The children had chosen her. From that day forward, Eleanor's world shifted. It began with small moments. A tiny hand slipping into hers as they walked through the rose gardens. James dragging a blanket to her chambers when he had nightmares, whispering, "Can I stay?" Clara sitting beside her by the fire, asking for stories about her childhood. And Eleanor gave herself to them. She read them tales until her throat grew raw. She bandaged scraped knees with more care than a queen might place upon her crown. She sewed little stars onto James's cloak because he said he wanted the sky to follow him. She braided Clara's hair, weaving not just ribbons but trust between them. But with each tender bond she forged, she felt the Duke's gaze heavier upon her. One evening, as she guided Clara through piano practice, she sensed him standing in the doorway. She kept her hands steady on the keys, though her heart raced. His eyes were unreadable, a storm trapped behind composure. When Clara struck a wrong note and Eleanor gently corrected her, the Duke spoke, his voice deep, controlled. "They are attached to you." Eleanor looked up. "Children need someone who sees them." His jaw tightened. "They had their mother." Her reply was soft, but firm. "And they still do. I would never take her place. But they need someone here, now." For a moment, silence stretched between them, taut as a bowstring. Then he turned away, leaving her with the echo of his footsteps. Yet, though he kept his distance, the children only clung tighter. And Eleanor, against all warnings of her fragile heart, found herself loving them with a fierceness she had never known. Love had found her, not from the man who vowed never to give it, but from the small souls who had chosen her in defiance of grief. Still, late at night, she would touch the letter hidden beneath her pillow. Those 3 words burned brighter than any candle. But she could not help but wonder, what would happen if the Duke discovered the depth of their allegiance to her? Would he pull them away? Would he resent her for stealing the love he himself could not bear to give? Or would that very love force him to face the walls he had built around his heart? Eleanor did not yet know. But she clung to the letter, and to the fragile, growing bond that was slowly rewriting the story she thought had already been sealed. The days slipped into weeks, and with each one Eleanor found herself drawn further into the lives of Clara and James. She noticed their small habits, how James refused to sleep without his toy soldier clutched tight in his fist, how Clara whispered prayers for her mother before bed but always glanced at Eleanor afterward as though torn between loyalty and longing. It was not long before the whispers in the halls began. Servants are never blind, they see more than their masters believe. Eleanor overheard them once as she passed the linen room. Her grace is kind to the children, one maid said, folding sheets. More than his grace, another muttered. The little ones laugh again. It's been years since laughter filled this house. Eleanor moved away quickly, heart pounding, afraid that even kindness could be twisted into scandal. One evening, James fell ill with fever. Eleanor sat by his bedside, pressing cool cloths against his flushed cheeks. His small hand clung to her wrist with desperate strength. Don't leave, he whispered, voice hoarse. I won't, she promised, smoothing back his damp hair. Not for anything. It was then that the Duke entered, his tall frame filling the doorway. His eyes swept the room, landing on Eleanor seated at James's side. For the first time, there was no indifference in his gaze, only something raw, almost vulnerable. You stayed, he said quietly. Eleanor looked up, meeting his eyes. Where else would I be? Their gazes locked, and for a heartbeat the world seemed to still. Then James stirred, murmuring, Mama, his little arms reached not for Eleanor but for the shadow of the mother he had lost. Eleanor's throat tightened as she tucked the blankets around him. The Duke's expression hardened once more. I will send for the physician, he said, his voice clipped, and turned away before she could answer. That night, Eleanor sat awake long after the fever broke. She stared at the ceiling, torn between sorrow and defiance. She had not come to replace anyone, yet in the children's eyes she was becoming something the Duke refused to name. The letter beneath her pillow whispered against her thoughts. We choose you. But what would happen when the Duke discovered just how much they had chosen her? The answer came sooner than she expected. One afternoon, Clara burst into Eleanor's chambers, cheeks flushed, curls flying loose. He's angry, she gasped. Eleanor rose from her desk. Who? Father. Clara's voice trembled. He found James's new drawing. He made a picture of us, a family. Me, James, you, and Father. But Father said, her lip quivered. He said it was not true. Eleanor felt the floor shift beneath her. She hurried to Clara, pulling the girl into her arms. It is true, she whispered fiercely. We are a family. Later that evening, she confronted the Duke in his study. He stood by the window, looking out over the gardens, his posture rigid as stone. You told them the drawing was a lie, Eleanor said, her voice trembling but steady. His shoulders stiffened. They should not confuse reality with fantasy. Reality, she stepped closer. Reality is that they love me, and I love them. That is not fantasy, it is life. It is what gives them strength. He turned then, his eyes burning with something darker than anger. You think love is so simple, that you can waltz into their lives, into mine, and mend what death has broken. I don't pretend to mend, she whispered. I only stand with them. They chose me, not because I am their mother, but because I am here. The Duke's jaw worked as though he fought words too dangerous to release. Finally, he said in a voice low and sharp, do not expect me to join in this charade. I warned you, I will never love you. The words cut again, reopening old wounds. But Eleanor did not flinch this time. She lifted her chin, her voice quiet but unyielding. Then do not love me. I did not marry for your love, I married for duty. But your children, they are innocent, and they deserve someone who will never walk away from them. If that must be me alone, so be it. For a long moment, silence hung heavy between them. Then he turned back to the window, dismissing her with a flick of his hand. Do as you please. Eleanor left, her heart battered but unbroken. In the weeks that followed, she poured herself even more deeply into Clara and James. She taught Clara embroidery, though the girl's stitches were crooked. She helped James build wooden castles, listening to him chatter about knights and dragons. Their laughter grew brighter, their smiles surer. And though the Duke said nothing, Eleanor often felt his gaze upon them. Once, when James toppled from a tree and Eleanor rushed forward, the Duke was there first, lifting the boy into his arms with a tenderness that surprised them all. For a fleeting second, Eleanor saw not the cold, distant man she had married, but a father aching beneath the weight of loss. That night, she found another letter on her bed. The handwriting was Clara's, slightly neater this time. "Don't give up," it said. "He needs you too, even if he doesn't know it." Eleanor pressed the paper to her lips, tears slipping down her cheeks. She had thought she was only chosen by the children. But perhaps, just perhaps, there was still a chance that even the Duke, with his locked heart and unspoken grief, might one day choose her too.